One quick order of business before we get the meeting going is that it is on the agenda. However, we do not have a current chair or vice chair right now. So I am more than happy to start the meeting and call it to order unless any current member of the Arts Committee on the gallery right now would like to do that. Wonderful. Okay, so I would like to call to order the February 8th Albany Arts Committee member. And the first order of business, excuse me, let me get my, okay, so roll call. So again, this is kind of how a lot of the meetings will happen for votes and motions for the Arts Committee. Since we are all virtual, we will just do a roll call. I'll call your name. Again, please verbally say yes or I, or if it's a roll call present, just because we may have some visually impaired people out watching and we want them to be just as included. So roll call. Member Abrams? Don't forget to unmute everybody. Yep.
Present.
Thank you. Member Black? Don't forget to unmute everybody.
If you're on the laptop, you can also press space bar.
She's got it. She's got it.
Okay. Yes. Present.
Member Bergman?
Present, yes.
Thank you. Member Gatch?
Present.
Thank you. Member Goodman?
Present.
And Member Richards?
Present.
Okay, wonderful. Hopefully, as everybody has had a chance to take a look at the minutes from our January meeting, January 11th. Unless there is any discussion or changes anybody would like to suggest, can we have a motion and a second of approval of the January 11th minutes? Member Gatch?
I have a quick question. Just in quickly looking over the minutes, I noticed that the motion from the last meeting is just summarized. Is there a place where the complete language of the motion shows up where people can access that?
Not written out. There was a discussion happening while we made the motion. So we do have, I mean, all of our meetings are public and recorded and is on YouTube. But you're right, it is a summary because there was a lot of points staff was kind of picking out. However, we will have a chance to maybe reevaluate that when we schedule a time to bring that artist back in and make sure that we are all on the same page about what we asked her to do.
Right. Okay. Then I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, and don't forget to unmute yourself. We need a vote now. So Member Abrams?
Yes. I approve.
Okay. Thank you. Member Black?
Yes.
Member Bergman, excuse me. Oh, you're muted, Member Bergman.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Gatch?
Yes.
Okay, and Member Goodman? You're muted, Member Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you. And Member Richards?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Excuse
wonderful.
me, Liam.
Yes.
You keep forgetting me.
Oh. It's what happens when you take notes and the notes are incorrect. Member Szymanski, can I have
Oh,
you?
yes, I'm here.
Are you here? Okay, and Member Szymanski, how would you like to vote on the approval of the minutes from January 11th? Okay. Thank you. And you just need to pull up our agenda again really quick. Okay, now is the time on to item 4, time for announcements. Staff does not have any announcements. Do we have any announcements from any of the Arts Committee members at this time?
Hey, Liam?
Yes, sir.
Before that, I think there's supposed to be public comment. Is that right?
You are correct. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Goodman. This is why I'm not, Member Goodman. This is why I am not the chair. Eva, it looks like we have one member of the public with their hand raised. Two members of the public with their hand raised, excuse me.
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Hi, thank you. This is Jeremiah. Good evening, everybody. I would just like to say if we could put on a future agenda item or with my public comment, if we could do some artwork regarding the Lejeune Ohlone Native American Indians that were here on this land before the new Americans came and started living here. It's hundreds of years ago. I know we've got, Black Lives Matter artwork, and we have, Spring into Haiku artwork. I was just wondering if it might be respectful to the Lejeune Ohlones if at some point in time this committee might have something on the agenda regarding Native artwork, possibly around the city, and then this commission could recommend it to City Council or something, possibly. I'm not sure exactly how that works. But I would just like to use my public comment to suggest some sort of artwork. There's Black Lives Matter, there's Spring into Haiku, and then also it would be nice if there was some sort of, Ohlone artwork around the city. I just think that would be really neat. Maybe a map, of the old land, or some sort of shell mound, some artwork. I just think that could be a good idea. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And it looks like our next attendee with her hand raised is Eugenie. Whenever you're ready, Eugenie.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi there. My
Yes.
name is Eugenie Shu. Nice to meet you, Liam. I spoke with you on the phone a little earlier. So I am here to announce that I organized an art project that involves the community. It's called the Albany COVID Art Project. The website just got launched today, and this is a Albany-wide art project that involves any person who lives, works, volunteers, or has a kid going to school in Albany is invited to submit art via an online portal that is connected to the website. The website is albanycovidartproject.org. And I've posted some things on Facebook around in the Facebook groups regarding Albany about it. So you submit some art that's a photograph of any kind of visual art you can imagine, sculpture, painting, drawing, whatever, or a video. You can do a music video, you can do poetry slam, just whatever you can submit through an online portal. And then that art appears in the website. And then once the deadline comes, the deadline for submitting the art is April 30th. Then the artworks are passed around through the website to whoever you want in the world. They vote on the art. They vote on the art that they like. They pay $1 per vote. And the money goes directly to the Albany Community Foundation. So the money is raised by the voters. The people who win the first, second, and third place of each category, there are 3 categories based on age: adults, teens, and kids, as well as a 4th category that is all ages, and the theme is 2021. Those 12 winners will win prizes that are going to be gift cards to Solano Avenue merchants. Then, if people want to, they can elect to donate their artwork to be auctioned off online. And the auction is open to anyone. You don't have to live in Albany. All the money raised is going to go to the Albany Community Foundation. And though the money's raised will then be donated to organizations that support food delivery, food banks, and will basically help those who have been hit hardest by the pandemic in and outside of Albany. That is all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eugenie.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so excuse me, sorry about that. I don't see any other hands raised, so we can move on to our next agenda item, number 4, announcements from staff and committee members. Staff does not have any announcements this month. Are there any arts committee members with announcements? Okay, so next we move into our presentations, and we do not have any presentations on the agenda this evening, so we'll move into discussion and possible action matters on related items to the related to the following items. And first is our election of officers. So bear with me, as we don't necessarily have a linear way of explaining this, but we will go down the list of committee members, and everybody has the opportunity to nominate one person. You can nominate yourself. After everybody has had a chance to nominate, we will then reverse order that nomination list, and the first person to receive a majority of votes will be that position. So first we'll go for the chair, and then we'll go for the vice chair. So for example, if there is member A, B, and C on a committee, member C, whoever they nominate, that will be the first person to vote on back up the order. And again, whoever receives the majority of votes will be that position, the chair or vice chair.
I'm sorry, Liam, can I
Yeah.
just make a point of clarification?
Please.
Actually, if you would like to nominate for somebody, just go ahead and raise your hand. It doesn't have to go down the list of members.
Wonderful. But the same is true, however,
Correct.
that the last nominated individual will be the first person that we vote on.
Correct.
And then the first person to receive a majority, which in our case would be 4 or more, would then be that position.
Correct.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Anne.
And to clarify, you can vote for yourself, I believe, right?
You can nominate yourself, correct. And vote for yourself.
Yes, and the votes will happen the same way that the roll call and any motion items will be as well. I will just do an order alphabetically, and I will make sure that member Szymanski is included in that. Okay, without any further ado, if anybody is ready, physically raise your hand or use that emoji raise hand, and anybody can start the nomination process.
And this is for chair, right, Liam?
Correct. Thank you, Eva. This is for chair.
Maybe, Liam, do you want to talk about what does a chair,
Yeah.
what does a chair do?
Well, they do what I did to start the meeting, hopefully better. The chair leads our meetings. The chair leads the arts committee meetings. The meeting process of it is, yes, calling to order. Staff will still continue to help out with roll call, but the chair will help lead the discussion, move through the agenda as I did earlier. The chair could be a newer member to the committee. The chair is somebody who can kind of liaison well with staff, which is myself and Eva. And new members, I would like to introduce Eva Phelan, my coworker, who's at the meeting as well. The chair will also have a constant and direct dialogue for each monthly meeting with the staff member, myself, and or Eva Phelan if I'm not available. And then the chair will also present whether it's motions or findings or larger items to City Council. Again, the Arts Committee is an advisory body for the City Council. So whether it's checking in on decisions that the committee's made or recommendations, eventually you will need to go in front of the City Council. So the chair will do that as well. The vice chair is kind of the second chair basically in a music metaphor there, but if the chair is not able to attend the meeting for whatever reason, the vice chair will step in. And then, unfortunately, if the chair is no longer able to have those dialogues with staff that need to before each meetings, the vice chair will do that as well. Again, we have had in the Arts Committee time, since I or Eva have been the liaison, we've had newer members in the chair position, and the committee has gone well. Don't be too concerned that you maybe don't know all the ins and outs yet. Staff will help you with that. It really is somebody who is excited about this committee and who has the order skills to kind of power us through each meeting. Again, a little bit better than I did, hopefully. Did that help? Did it? Anybody on a nominated? Yes, Member Richards.
Question. Does the chair have to take meeting notes?
No, the chair does not take meeting notes. Staff, we take action minutes, notes. We do, staff encourages everyone to take notes so we all kind of remember, but it is not a duty of the chair to take official notes for that meeting. That's what Eva and I are here for. Yeah, Maris.
Okay, I nominate Member Gash. Got to start somewhere.
Can I throw out a nomination?
Yes, absolutely.
I would love to nominate Member Szymanski.
Back at you. Oh God.
Well, I guess either one of you have to kind of, if you will take the nomination or if you, assuming that you will take the nomination.
Thank you, Ann. I was, Member Gash, do you accept the nomination?
Is it for chair or vice chair?
Chair.
Yes. Do it. You're good.
All right. I accept the nomination.
Okay. And Member Szymanski, do you accept your nomination for chair?
Rather be vice chair.
Good.
Good. Okay.
Good.
Well, let's go by step with this. So Member Szymanski, do you accept your nomination for chair?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations at this time?
All of you know we're swimming in the dark, right? Okay.
You have a great committee going. You have some newer members. I think that you're all equally qualified and talented to take this on.
Thank you.
Can I just say, if someone is uncomfortable nominating themselves and really want to do it, I am happy to nominate. So
yeah.
So member,
if you really want it, come on.
If you want it, just you can even message me and I'll pretend that.
Okay.
Well, speaking seriously, if either Member Szymanski or Member Gash would prefer to be vice chair as opposed to chair, then this would be a good time to speak.
I already said that.
You said what?
I said I'd rather be vice chair.
Then you could decline the nomination for chair then.
Oh, well. Oh, good Lord. Okay. But I thought you had to accept that and then vote, and then I don't know how that
You don't need to accept the nomination. Yeah, Member Szymanski, you can decline the nomination. We do have our vice chair voting coming up pretty soon.
Okay, I can decline it.
Are there any other nominations? Anne, is it okay if
if there's only one nomination, just go ahead and just go through the roll call vote.
Yes.
Just to make sure that there's a majority.
Okay, are there any other nominations at this time for the chair for the Albany Arts Chair?
Are you sure?
You may.
We're sure.
Okay, Member Abrams. So this is now a vote, everybody, on Member Gash for the chair of the Albany Arts Committee.
Yes.
Yes.
Hold
Liam,
on. Oh, yeah.
We're going to need to take public comment here first.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you all for your patience in this. We have one public comment. Jeremiah, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I was just curious, one thing that wasn't mentioned, one of the responsibilities of the chair. Is the chair responsible to write next agenda items for the next meeting and organize the next agenda with staff? I was just wondering if that was part of the responsibility of the chair. Is it the chair and the vice chair that write the next agenda items, or I'm not sure about that. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremiah. Anne, would you like to answer that, or would you like me to?
Well, it's usually the chair that prepare or coordinate the agenda items with the staff liaison. But of course, in the event that the chair's not available, then the vice chair would step in that role.
Correct. And historically on the Arts Committee, the chair has inquired at that time of the end of the meeting for future agenda items, kind of what the other committee members have thought could be future agenda items as well. But thank you for that public comment.
And adding on to that, Liam, is that anyone from the committee can suggest items for the next agenda.
But it depends on the agenda availability to see. It may not be on the agenda right away.
Correct. Yes, the agenda is created, after that meeting has commenced. So whether it's an important topic that we need to discuss or a motion, or maybe staff doesn't have enough information. Yes, if a future agenda item is suggested, it doesn't necessarily mean it's on the next agenda. Okay, so let's do a roll call vote for the nomination of Member Gash for our Arts Committee Chair. Member Abrams?
Yes.
Member Black?
Yes.
Member Bregman?
Yes.
Member Gash?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. You have a majority. What great timing there. Okay, we are now going to do the same process for the vice chair. Do we open?
Liam, don't you have to call everybody's name for the?
Yes, but
Or
it's
no?
a simple majority. I can continue.
I understand that. I mean, just for the record.
Sure, of course. Member Goodman?
Yes.
Member Szymanski?
Yes.
Member Richards?
Yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful. The
To
nomination.
remind all the committee members, if you could please mute yourself, and then when you're talking, push the space bar, just so we don't have any background chatter. So keep yourself muted. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.
Do I need to do an acceptance speech or anything?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, you should have your remarks ready to go, correct?
Okay.
Chair Gatch. Okay, so now we are gonna do, I guess gonna ask a clarified question. And do we do public comment for the vice chair as well, or is this one agenda item and the public comment is passed? Okay, let's do our
Sorry.
nomination.
Yeah, if there's public comment, then you can take it for the vice chair
Okay, but I don't.
after the nomination.
Okay. So since it's our second try at it, and we're going to be so much better the second time around, would anybody like to nominate a vice chair for the Albany Arts Committee? And please, members, remember to keep yourself muted until you are ready to talk, just to kind of cut down on that background noise. Do I have any? Yes, Member Goodman.
I nominate Member Szymanski.
Okay. Okay, and if we have any other nominations at this time? It does not look like we do. We'll give one more couple of seconds here for any last second. You can nominate yourself. Okay, wonderful. So Member Szymanski has been nominated for the position of Vice Chair. Do we have any public comment? Again, the Vice Chair will fulfill a lot of those chair duties when the chair is not able to. Okay, let's do a roll call vote. So this is for the voting on the nomination of Member Szymanski for the Vice Chair position. Member Abrams?
Yes.
Member Black?
Yes.
Member Bergman?
Yes.
Member Gatch?
Yes.
Member Goodman?
Yes.
Member Szymanski? Oh, you're muted, Member Szymanski.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, and Member Richards?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, great, okay. Both nominations pass with a majority. So again, I'm gonna ask a lot of clarifying questions here. Eva, do we create a motion for the new chair and vice chair, or does it go into the minutes as a vote?
Yeah, it just goes in as a vote, I believe, so we can have our new chair take it from here.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, now I am woefully underprepared because I don't even have the agenda up in front of me.
Okay, no problem. I am more than happy to share my screen with that, Member Gash.
Okay, I think I can pull it up here too.
Okay, can everybody see that?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Looks a little bit different, but yeah, here's the agenda. So we are now at the Spring into Haiku.
Okay, so next agenda item is Spring into Haiku. And I believe that's Member Goodman's terrain. So do we hand it over to Member Goodman?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I originally presented this plan to the Arts Committee last September, and then I had a follow-up note in November explaining a little bit more detail about what I thought we would do with the program coming into spring, and I refer you to the document that was part of the packet that accompanied the agenda. So I don't want to go through it all again for the new members, although I guess I ought to do a brief summary. Basically, we collect original haiku from Albany citizens. You can either live in Albany, work in Albany, or go to school in Albany to qualify for submitting a haiku. You can be any person of any age. The haiku is submitted. There's a committee consisting of me and usually, well, it was the poet laureate, but she's termed out, but she's agreed to help again this year, Becca Black. And we often try to get a high school student involved as well. So we sort through all the submissions and we pick the ones that we think are best for the program. We print them up on both yard signs and on 11 by 17 inch pieces of paper. And we put the yard signs up and down Solano Avenue and in some of the city parks. And we take the 11 by 17s, we laminate them in plastic and put them in the big bellies. That's what we've done so far. We've done this 4 times. And each program is called Fall into Haiku because it took place in fall. We get submissions in September, October, and then the poems would go up around Thanksgiving. They'd last up until just before Christmas. Didn't have a chance to do it in 2020 because of the pandemic. So the program has been reimagined and now it's being called Spring into Haiku. And one of the things that I wanted to do different this year from previous years was to actually have an active Facebook site, which would be very public, meaning that anyone who's on Facebook would be able to see the poems and see what Albany is doing with haiku and with poetry. But as before, we would restrict the actual submissions to citizens of Albany. We would encourage, I guess, people to join the crowd and to join the Facebook community it'd be a private group, but visible to the public, to join the group and comment on each other's poems and submit poems. And then we would go through those poems and select a bunch of them, and with a poet's permission, submit them again to the city Spring into Haiku program and print some of those up. Now, at the same time, since not everybody has Facebook or believes in Facebook or thinks it's a force for good, we would also do it the old-fashioned way, which is what we did previously, which would be to accept both submissions by mail as well as submissions on the city website. This was supposed to get underway in January, but because discussions of the city became a bit extended, that didn't happen. So here we are in February. The original plan, I think, had been to have these up in April. My guess is going to be more like June. I'd certainly like to get it before June 21st so that we can still honestly call it Spring into Haiku and not Spring into Summer Haiku or something like that. But I don't know. We've got to make sure that we have enough time to do this and to do it right. One of the wrinkles that I've faced, and I've had a lot of discussions with Liam about, and thank you, Liam, for going to the city on behalf of the program, was to try and get the city's endorsement of this Facebook list or the Facebook group, so that, well, for a variety of reasons, partly to have the city's endorsement and imprimatur, so to speak, on the program, so that people felt it was legitimate. And it was more than just me, Peter, exercising his haiku hobby and, making it a very personal thing. I wanted to be a much more civic-minded thing. The other thing was if the city had some sort of ownership in it, then if I ever decided that I would leave the city of Albany or otherwise depart, that there would be some legacy and some means for the city to take things over. So it's not my program, in other words. It really belongs to the Arts Committee. And I didn't really want to have it viewed as my particular personal thing, because I really don't think it is. However, the city is worried about being on the line for various things that people might post, getting into trouble, getting his name smeared, or getting embarrassed in some way. So we have worked out a kind of language whereby I would say that this is kind of done. I don't know. I can't even remember what we worked out, but it looks like it's going. I'm going to run it as part of my Facebook page as a private list, but it is going to be made known that it's kind of with the blessing of the city, or that it's. No, I can't even say that. I'm not sure what we're going to say, but it is going to end up channeling into the city, and we're going to be using it as a source of haiku poems for the Spring into Haiku. And ideally, I mean, the whole point of doing it on Facebook is that it preserves the poems in perpetuity. And it also makes it possible for us to do kind of ad hoc programs. If something happens in the world or in Albany, we can immediately start gathering occasional haiku, because that's sort of the nature of haiku. It's very instantaneous and of the moment. It should reflect what people are seeing at that particular time, and so it can be very spontaneous. So it really feeds into the idea of what haiku is, and it helps us extend the program, make it a lot more robust, and gives us a real legacy of poetry that hopefully people in the city can enjoy for many years to come. So that's kind of where we're going. At the moment, as you may know, I'm a publisher, and I'm kind of in deadline hell at the moment. So it's going to be about another 2 or 3 weeks before I can really raise my head up and get this underway. But it will get underway, and sometime, I really hope before June, we'll be able to have the haiku out on the streets of Albany. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them for the committee. Should I call on people?
Sorry, Member Richards?
Yeah, is there an amount of public funds that is needed for this haiku program?
Oh, yes, thanks for asking. For the first 3 years, the city funded it through the Art and Public Places Fund, But it was made known to us that those funds are really not to be used for this kind of art, only for permanent public art. So last year, we received a generous grant from the Albany Community Foundation, and they also earmarked funds for it for 2020, but it didn't happen. But nevertheless, they said that they'd be happy to provide funds again for 2021. There's a budget attached to the packet that's in with the agenda item. It comes to about $880 though, and that includes the cost of signs and the amount of design and production. I have to hire somebody to do some of the actual production work to get it done. It's not very expensive, but all told, it comes to about $880.
Sorry to interrupt. Chair Gash, we had a public comment right as we kind of finished the informational piece there from Chair Goodman.
Okay, can you explain to me real quick, is there any sort of order that we go in terms of committee member questions, responses, and then public comments, or is it all mixed together?
I'm going to do my best to explain that, and I'm going to rely on Eva if she needs to fill anything in. The agenda item is brought up by you, the chair, and then the informational piece is given, and then we will go to public comment, and then we will come back for committee discussion, which is your group. The committee can choose to address a question that came up in public comment, or we can address that at a future meeting if we have the agenda item up again.
Okay.
You're not required to respond either.
Okay, great. So
They're not, sorry, they're not, you're not required to respond to public comment, but you're welcome to in your response.
And the chair can kind of bring it back, you know, if you want to have your discussion and then that is addressed. The question is then addressed as well in your discussion.
Okay.
And I think for this item too, that there can be, discussion amongst the committee. You can ask clarifying questions and everything. And then when it seems like you've gotten all your information, we can open it up to public comment. And if there's further discussion needed, we can go from there. So if there's any further questions for Member Goodman.
Are there, does anyone else have any clarifying questions before we go to public comment? Yeah, Member Szymanski. You are muted. You're muted. Yep.
Sorry. Maybe I'm not getting this, but are you saying that the way that you put your haiku into this is through your Facebook page?
Well,
Contact you through a Facebook page?
well, there's going to be instructions on the Facebook page itself when it gets set up, but yes, people will be able to submit haiku onto the Facebook page, and they may not be submitting them necessarily for the Spring Into Haiku program, but as moderator, I may go through and select them and say, hey, would you be interested in submitting this to the Spring Into Haiku program? And if they agree, then it would go into the hopper with the rest of the submissions, which might come in by mail or which might come in through the city website.
So what is the link to the city? I mean, if I wanted to put a haiku in to be considered, where would I go?
Well, you could do it on the Facebook page.
The city Facebook page?
No, that's what I'm saying. The city won't do a Facebook page.
Right.
The city will have a separate website, as it had in the past 4 years, where you can go, and it's explicitly designed to be a submission portal. So it'll collect your name, your address, your phone number, your email, and then it'll explain the rules of the rules of the program, and it'll also have a place where you can type in your haiku and submit it. Then those periodically, the city will collect all those submissions from its website and send them to me, and then I'll put them together with a group of poems I've collected from Facebook, and then we'll do the final selection from that. We usually have around 35 to 40 haiku that go onto the yard signs, and a bunch more that go onto the 11 by 17-inch posters. And the number is partly determined by budget. What can we afford to do? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It just seems like it's more complicated than it should be. I don't know, somehow.
Well, I mean, it was not complicated. The only thing that's different this year from previous years is that there's now a Facebook page, which allows a lot more interaction before the poems are actually submitted, and generates a lot more enthusiasm, energy, and visibility for the program. Prior to that, it was just a city website page. You'd have to know about the program, which we tried to, get people to know about by promoting it, but people actually had to go to the city website in order to submit, and that was the only way that they could get poems in. So hopefully this will actually open things up a bit
Make
more.
it bigger. Yeah,
Yeah,
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Abrams?
I'm just wondering if the committee or the city has an email list or a mailing list that we can get things out to members of the public to find out about these things, so we don't necessarily have to go through Facebook or social media.
Well, well, two things. One is the city does have an email newsletter that it sends out every Friday, I think, and presumably it has other ways of letting people know by public posting on kiosks and the like. So the city does have its own publicity media that it uses. Facebook is not. We're not using Facebook as the only way of letting people know about it. The Facebook page there is really to actually get more submissions and make the haiku more of a all year round thing rather than just a 1 month out of the year sort of thing. I would prefer that the city take over the Facebooking of this program, but they are not willing to do that.
Peter, you mentioned that you might be working with high school students as well. And this seems like maybe a good opportunity to bring someone on as a social media manager, that they can, in one fell swoop, they could post to Instagram and Facebook all at the same time, if that was something that someone was interested in moderating and taking on.
I'm totally open to that. We did have, when I mentioned high school before, then it was in the context of having a high school student as one of the judges. We've done that in the past. That required having a high school teacher who was engaged in the program and knew exactly the right student that would be suitable for it. But having a high school student as a social media manager, where they take on not just this, but many of these other things that we want people to know about to promote the arts in Albany is a terrific idea.
All right. Any other comments or questions before we open it up to public discussion? All right, then we will move to public comments. Liam, are there any public comments?
Jeremiah, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jeremiah. I think this is a wonderful addition to the Spring into Haiku, is having this Facebook page. This is great. Yeah, and maybe we could, once the Spring into Haiku is finalized and the judges has picked their poems, maybe we could talk to Jeremy Allen on KALB, and we can have those displayed on Albany Channel 33 when there's nothing else going on. They can just flash the haikus on Albany TV. Yeah, maybe we could extend the Albany High School, maybe a middle school student can try to write one, or primary school, elementary students, they could practice poetry. It'd be great to get the Albany School District involved. I was wondering if maybe someone can give an example of a haiku if you get a chance. And then I was going to get back down to basics on the budget for this. The whole link on the agenda looks wonderful. And then at the bottom, it talks about the finances for this, and it mentions, there's in-house fees and outhouse fees. Basically, outside production and in-house production. Outhouse production is about $320. I was just wondering who is going to be getting paid that $320 at $40 an hour? Somewhere on this committee or a business? I'm not sure. And in-house production, is that city staff that's going to get paid an additional $50 per hour? Just wondering where that other money, the outside production and in-house production, who's paying for that and where's that money exactly going? Because I think that's taking a lot of money away from actually making more posters, making more yard signs and getting it out and about. And also, if you want a yard sign, how could someone apply for a yard sign to be on their front yard? Also, once this is finalized, of course, you're going to be posting the poems on the Facebook page so everybody could see the outcome after the application process. So just curious about the in-house production, out-house production. I think that money could be done toward the yard sign producing and have it more available to the public. And the outside production and in-house production, can we find a volunteer that maybe wants to volunteer, like an Albany High School student? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeremiah.
I can answer those questions. As far as in-house production, outside production, the poems are brought in basically from an Excel sheet, and they have to be brought over and placed into InDesign files, which are then generated as PDF files, which are then sent to a professional printing company to print up the yard signs. And all that work needs to be done professionally and needs to be done to specification. So we hire a professional to do it. And the person that I've used in the past was a freelancer who did live in Albany. She's recently left town, and that's what she charges. And that's $40 an hour for design work. Is, if you're in the graphic arts business, that's pretty low. So that's not a bad deal. The in-house production is here it's down as an estimate. It's a bit of it's to cover any other essentials that come in, plus any time that is done at my office that is required outside the normal production time, which would be like time and organizing the work and dealing with the various issues that come up. So $40 an hour, $50 an hour for that kind of work is not unusual, and it's not extreme. And I would not want to give it to a student, because I know it goes wrong if it's not done right. It ends up costing a lot more that way. As far as yard signs on the front yard, we used to actually, the original plan for the committee was to put the signs all around the city, and the city said no. They didn't want signs on people's yards because it might. Eva, were you there? Liam, were you there? They suggested that if someone were so fortunate as to have a haiku on their front yard, that their property might go up in value and their neighbors would be pissed off at them. So they didn't want to create that inequity and disputes among neighbors. So it was decided to restrict the yard signs to common areas, such as the commercial strips of Solano. And they used to also go in San Pablo, but San Pablo turned out to be a terrible area for this sort of thing. Windy, the dirt there was like concrete, and good spaces were few and far between, so we don't do it on San Pablo anymore. And unfortunately, the city will not allow us to put yard signs on front yard. However, I think we have had occasions where parents were so happy that their child's haiku was chosen that they paid to have an extra yard sign or a 11 by 17 printed up. So I guess that's a possibility if someone wanted a copy of their own. We don't offer that as a general rule, though.
To
Great,
speak
thank
to the volunteers, Peter and other arts committee members go out and with a drill and a hammer and a wagon and put them all up. So
Yes,
thank you to
drilling-
Peter for
drilling
doing that and
in-
leading the force.
Yeah, drilling into dirt. I mean, that's really yeah. Well, maybe in spring it's probably going to be soft, with all the
Softer.
rain.
And then also just to really quickly piggyback, Peter, because you had mentioned that we also, people can come pick up their signs after the spring or fall into haiku program has ended. So that is also a way that some of the parents or poets have gotten a hand on their work. Excuse me, gotten their hands on their work.
I have a question. I mean, isn't it possible that off of Facebook or some website, you could print your own haiku out and put it in your window?
Sure.
I mean, why can't we just do that? If they were parents or people that did their own haiku, you see signs in people's windows all over the place.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't see why people wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah,
And they
I
put
think
all
it's
sorts of
really
signs in.
great.
So that's great. Somebody had the idea of us printing some of these up and giving them to businesses and ask them to put them in their, put them up in their places too. I mean, I think
Yeah,
it's
I
good to
know.
spread it around. The yard signs are a particular, I guess they're kind of like an event. They go up and they're only there for 3 weeks, and people come and point and say, look what my kid did, or this is my haiku. And so it's, it makes it a bit special. But the idea really is to have have this, stirring a love of poetry and haiku throughout the year.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I understand the event of having a yard sign or a physical thing that people look at, but I would think people would love to print them out and put them in their own windows.
Well, I encourage them to do that. And maybe once if the Albany Community Foundation pulls the plug on funding, that may be what we do.
Yeah, I think it would be great.
Can I interject real quick? And Liam, can you let me know if there are any other public comments from the community before we open it up to discussion among the committee members?
There are no other public comments at this time.
Okay, great. So anyone else have any questions or comments for Peter or for discussion? Peter, is there anything that Member Abrams?
Yeah, just a quick comment. As for the businesses on Solano Avenue and probably the rest of Albany, it's nice that they're along the business district because it brings people to the town. It's another reason, it helps the city attract visitors. And so I like that aspect of it. So to have it go virtual doesn't really do much for the city. I mean, it's a great thing, but it doesn't do much for the city otherwise.
Member Black?
Two things. As far as going virtual, I don't think anybody is thinking about eliminating the other part of it. I think it's an additional kind of thing to do. And I think that's a very nice idea. But we certainly would never want to, unless we had to, get rid of the actual signs and things. Frankly, I know that once they're up and when I'm running errands or walking around town and seeing them, it just makes me joyful. It's just such a lovely thing to come across and see. It's a lovely program. Kudos to Peter. Well done.
Oh, thank you, Sharon.
Great. And Peter, is there anything that the committee needs to sign off on or vote on in regards to this at this time?
No, I don't think so. As far as I know, the program has already been approved. So I'm just kind of reporting on, where we are in getting it into, putting it into effect.
Great. All right.
So also, this program will also come up in as we start talking about the next 2-year work plan. So Peter kind of set the stage for as we start talking about the work plan and the PAPP, which is kind of the budget what the committee wants to spend. So it's good information to have as we go into that.
Great. All right. If there are no more comments, then I think we move to the next agenda item, which is that Black Lives Matter art project? Okay, which I think is then me.
Yes, yes.
So
would you, sorry to interrupt you, Chair. Would you like me to bring up the document that you we included in the agenda?
Sure. Can bring that up. And let me just start by kind of introducing it, especially for the new members, and just saying a couple of things on it. So this was a project that a couple of previous committees, when I came on in September, and then I joined the subcommittee, and those previous committee members are no longer present. So this has kind of been a group effort up to this point. It's not just my project, and certainly if other committee members want to join the subcommittee, you are absolutely more than welcome. The other thing that I would say about it is that this has the kind of working name for this has been the Black Lives Matter Art Project. And I personally, since we don't represent the organizational structure of Black Lives Matter, I think the project would better be called like the project in support of the movement for Black Lives, or as others have suggested as well, that we think about a more expansive socially engaged framework that would include Indigenous members of the community, immigrants in the community, people of color, trans and queer members of the community, and so on. So we may think about this more expansively going forward, and a more appropriate name might also be up for discussion. So what Liam has pulled up here right now, this was actually kind of written by a previous committee member, Brendan Schneider, taken in part from various sources that I think was sent out to everyone. I don't know if people had a chance to look over the materials that Liam sent out earlier in the week. But this is kind of the framework for thinking about a call for artists, with some language that still needs to be developed, and which I have been terribly behind on developing. But essentially, the idea is to think about structuring a community-based project that's socially engaged, that brings in artists to initiate conversations and dialogue and debate within the community, and to use that material to generate a participatory project within Albany. The links that you will have gotten, if you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, include a call from Richmond that I think serves as a really great model for thinking about socially engaged artists working within the city. And it also includes a number of resources that I put together that I would say are not entirely in an order of priority, but if you start at the top and work your way down, it'll give you a really good background for thinking about how other cities have worked on social issues of social justice and community engagement with artists that are doing things like workshops and more ephemeral activities. Right now, where we're at with the project is we need to finalize a call for artists. We need to discuss it as a committee and advance it, hopefully, to the city council for approval. And then pending approval, we would put the call out to the public for artist submissions to present proposals for the project. And maybe I will,
Brandon, Brandon, Aaron, Chair Gash, and staff is more than happy to do this. Is there any chance you can do a quick background just for the newer committee members as well?
background of what specifically?
Just kind of how we got here, that it was the council directive and then it has shifted again. And Eva and I are more than happy to help out as well with the details.
Yeah, that would, I would appreciate that because like I said, I came in September.
That's right.
And my understanding was that there was some tentative funds that were earmarked. There were some conversations that had occurred in the Social Justice Committee, as well as the from the City Council as well, with a desire to create a project in support of the movement for Black Lives in Albany. It was initially, I think, modeled off of what was happening in other cities of the kind of street writing of Black Lives Matters at the street level, but then also thinking about the possibility of a mural. And since then, the conversation has expanded to think beyond just a static public artwork and to think about what does it mean to actually really engage in the issue, and how can artists help the community to think through those issues and navigate creatively some of the possible solutions for reaching justice and equity in that regard. The other thing that came out of some of those initial discussions was that we as the committee are not in the position to create this work, that we are not the artists of this work. And this is good for any members of the public who may be attending to know as well, that what we are interested in doing is setting up a framework by which people who really want to engage in that discussion and really have the skills and the tools and the creative ability to do so can step in, and that we can support them in that process. There was also a conversation that was had about not wanting to predetermine the project, either in the call or in the process, but to think about the process of inviting the community in and dialoguing with the community, that would be in part the medium in which the artists would be working, that they are very process oriented, that we're working collectively as a community towards figuring out how we can best challenge white supremacy, how we can think about the movement in support of Black lives, and so on. Liam or Eva, do you have any other background information you want to provide?
I thought that sounded great, Chair Gatch. This came out of a lot of the George Floyd protests that happened in the summer, so that is another key one to bring up, kind of where this came from. The city, also in work with the Social and Economic Justice Commission and the City Council, hired consultants to kind of help with the larger discussion that the city and residents wanted to have surrounding these issues. And I know that those consultants worked with the Social and Economic Justice Commission as well, to kind of have a timeline, almost a stamp of approval for moving forward. And there is also some, I could be incorrect by saying policy changes, but certainly some other kind of changes throughout the city as a result of the consultants working with the Social and Economic Justice Commission and the City Council, and those are slotted into the timeline for this work as well. So just as Chair Gash said, we are not the driving force so much at this right now. However, we are working to kind of be ready when the time comes to have an appropriate document for finding artists and then passing on your nominations or potential artists to the City Council.
Great, thank you. Are there any clarifying questions that any of the committee members have? Yes, Member Goodman and then Member Szymanski.
Yes, thank you. I looked at the one from Richmond, which I guess was kind of a model for this, and Richmond at that time was soliciting 5 artists. Is there a number of artists that you've identified or that you've decided on or considering?
We have, for this particular project, we have not identified a number of artists, but this would be open to individual artists and collectives. So artists that are working collaboratively or artists that are working collectively would be welcome to it as well.
Another question is, once the artist comes in, meets with whatever kind of group that they're going to meet with, they come up with a plan, then what happens beyond that? When the Arts Committee has its own, in the master plan, it describes a rather painfully tedious process of looking at the art, evaluating it from all these different perspectives, everything from content to maintenance to, who's going to do it, what's it going to cost, all that sort of stuff. Where does the process of evaluation of the project itself come in, and who does that?
I think that's a really good question. If it's at the onset when we're looking at proposals, the initial selection of those proposals would in part be from this committee, and it would be in part by this committee, but hopefully also with community input at that point, right? So the point at which we're getting proposals from people, like other projects in the city, like we're opening those projects up for community input. But I think the overall evaluation of the project, like if we're thinking about a durational project, something that is not just like a single object that's created and brought in and placed, right? If we're thinking about a more multifaceted project where maybe the object comes in at the end so that it meets the city's standards of funding for art in Albany, which I might add is a little antiquated in its definition of art. But if it is in that sense, then I think some of those criteria can be applied at the end, and then in the process of working, then I think it would be really project dependent. It would be based on the project. I know in looking at the current amount that's budgeted for this, I think one key aspect that is missing that a good public art project would have in this case would be a curator or a project manager that is liaising with the city and working between the artist and making sure that the project is not only on track and that the artist has what they need to make it successful, but also that they're thinking about all of those different evaluative criteria along the way as well.
Can I add to that too? I just wanted to touch on 2 of the things that Member Goodman brought up, but going back to the master plan, which is, the Arts Committee's, it outlines everything, and there's a process for how we select art. And if a project is more than $10,000, it requires a selection panel. However, if a project is less than $10,000, the committee can also opt to use a selection panel, and it's outlined in the master plan of exactly who is on the selection panel and what that looks like. So that is an option. I just want to throw out there that if you're feeling like that the submissions that you want a more diverse or a different group of people to involve the community as well, you can look through that too on the selection process. And then as far as the money goes, again, this ties directly into the work we're going to be doing later in the agenda of the work plan and the PAPP. So to think in the next 2-year term, 2021 to 23, how much money does the committee want to set aside for this project or these projects? One thinks about, it'd be great to have 5 artists and allot $25,000, and maybe a project is bigger in scale and one could be $10,000 and one could be $1,000, or they're all $5,000. So that's something just to keep in the back of your mind as we move forward this meeting and then subsequent meetings as we continue to work on the work plan and PAPP, that you guys as an advisory body get to decide the scope of this project, what your goal is, and how much you want to set aside to present to council.
Thank you. Yeah, Member Black.
Question, the city council had hired a consultant to help with all of this. Now, would that person be part of this? If we wanted a manager or a project manager, would that be the person to do that since the city is already paying for them? I mean, I've never understood how this fit into the whole scheme of things. This person that they hired, this consultant.
The consultant was hired to work directly with the SEJC, the Social Economic and Justice Commission, to work through creating a diversity and equity plan. And I think originally the idea was about a year, but I believe that's been extended. So it doesn't relate. This was a separate item that came out of council kind of directly as a reaction to, again, the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And then as we've talked about, it's kind of morphed, but the consultant is really working on the diversity and equity plan. And they've created a whole myriad of different programs that are going to come out of that. So this is kind of a side piece, but I'm sure that whatever that person, that consultant, Nicole Anderson, might be available, and she already has provided feedback. I mentioned to the Chair Gatch that she did weigh in initially of the timing of all of it. So I think she would be a good sounding board if we have specific questions, but not a lead role.
Okay, thank you.
Member Szymanski.
I just want to understand that, is this arts project limited to visual art, or is it all the arts? I mean, could it be a theater production or a song or all of the above?
My understanding, and Liam and Eva can jump in and correct me where I go astray. My understanding is that the master plan stipulates, according to a lawyer, maybe not every lawyer, but according to the lawyer that was consulted, that the master plan stipulates that funding in Albany for arts has to go towards the creation of an object, that it's object based. I think from my reading of the master plan, and I am not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but my understanding of the master plan is that if we brought in artists who were doing something more process based or more participatory or more socially engaged, if they were doing a song or a workshop or a performance, that could be considered part of the creative process leading up to the creation of a final object. So if that final object were an exhibition, for example, at the end of it, that took all of the accumulated ephemera and presented it, or documented the process and then presented the documentation, or was somehow a community, collaborative, additive, kind of permanent or temporary sculptural form. I think my understanding is that there could be other art forms worked into the process as long as it ends up there.
I got it. You have to have a physical product at the end.
Is that correct, Liam and Eva?
Do you know?
Eva will have to chime in for whatever I miss here, but exactly that these are publicly drawn funds that come from our Art in Public Places Ordinance, which dictates the amount of money comes in is 1.75% of all commercial developments in the city above $1 million. I could be off on that total number. So since we're using those publicly derived funds through the mechanism of the Arts Master Plan, that it does need to go through the heading, which comes from the Arts Master Plan and the ordinance that I just mentioned for use of creating an object. And right, the committee has expressed desire for some flexibility in that, but the city attorney has come down a couple of times now and stated that, yes, it does need to be a creation of an object. Excuse me, the creation of an object.
Okay.
And I'll add to that too, to maybe clarify a little bit, maybe not, is it's an in lieu fund. So essentially a developer has, let's say the Belmont Village, right? And we give every developer the option to create art at the 1.75% of the construction cost as an art piece on site and that the Arts Committee will approve. In lieu of that, they will donate those funds to the Arts Committee.
Right.
So the same rules that they are held to, the committee is held to as far as using those funds. So if you felt, essentially, if the committee could do some sort of performance, you're saying that Belmont Village would be able to do a performance to satisfy that. And so in the ordinance, it's very specific of what is allowed. It's not necessarily just a sculpture. But some sort of visual art.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Just sometimes they create, it's not only like one performance, but a annual performance or or an event that continues that has been used in the past, not here specifically, but other places in the country that have qualified for those funds. And I just wondered what we thought about that.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the reasons why the Richmond proposal is appealing for us, because it also had some of those components. It was kind of a hybrid approach to looking at what does it mean to create like an exhibition at the end of it,
Right.
But still have a community engaged process where it's not just somebody parachuting in and kind of sticking something in the ground and kind of jetting, but that there's real engagement with the community.
Right. I agree.
Member Goodman?
Yes, well, on that point, I remember being at the meeting with the city attorney when he was discussing that, and he was pointing to a couple precedents in the state of California that governed his decision. He wasn't making it up out of whole cloth. He was pointing to some legal record that he felt offered a fairly firm foundation for his judgment. He didn't necessarily agree with it, but he felt like his hands were tied based on what other courts throughout California had decided. So in a sense, what they do with the rest of the country is not entirely relevant because he's kind of stuck with what California law is. But nevertheless, I was open to interpretation, and I would hope that we can figure out some ways, as Chair Gosh was talking about, of figuring out of taking this material and making it palatable, or coming up, working with the city attorney to challenge that decision and come up with a new interpretation. But I'm curious though about this whole project. My understanding was that the Arts Committee was brought into this as kind of a partner to run the project because we had experience doing this, and that's how we got involved in it. And now it seems like it's become actually one of our projects that we are then going to fund, and it has the same limitations as all the other projects that we're funding with the Art and Public Places Fund. So can Eva or Liam, can you tell me when did this actually become an Arts Committee project per se, as opposed to just something in which we were kind of a working partner with other committees in the city? Because I maybe I missed something over the last couple of months, but I'm not exactly sure how we got into this position. And if we're not in this position exactly, then those limitations that we're talking about with Art and Public Places Fund don't necessarily apply, because I thought that it wasn't actually going to be that money that was used for this anyway, that the city was actually going to come up with a budget because at the time, was it Mayor Pilch felt that this was very important for the city to do. So I'm a little fuzzy on my history here, but it seems like getting that part of it straight would really have a big effect on what we can do and what it's going to cost.
And you're right, it's morphed over time, so it is confusing. And it came as a council directive, and you're right, it came out of the discussion of that the council wanted to do something. And ultimately, the end of that conversation was that the Arts Committee is better equipped to make these decisions, find artists, go through the process, RFP process. And so it did come as from the council as a directive, but then I think as time went on, it realized that, and I think a lot of this came from the public, is that more thought needed to go into it, and just putting yellow letters on the ground wasn't sufficient for Albany. And so more thought needed to go into this. And what did that look like? And so that's where the discussion and a subcommittee was developed so that there could be more research done on what are other cities doing. And as far as the amount, originally, I believe it was $6,500 that the council had thought that they were going to put from the general fund to the Black Lives Matter mural, if you will, on the Ohlone Greenway. But because that has changed, and because they moved it to the Arts Committee, there is no money set aside at this point. An option that the committee has when they do go to council to, with their request of what the project will be, you can put in a dollar amount, is that, the Arts Committee has this amount set aside from the fund, and we're asking council to match or contribute this amount too. So that is an option.
Well, I'm still confused by what you said. Is it? So this is now an Arts Committee project, and the city no longer has the Social and Justice Economic Commission, or Social and Economic Justice Commission, and the council itself are no longer involved in funding or planning. And we don't.
JC was never, the subcommittee had wanted to involve SEJC in the planning process, and there was going to be, I'm not thinking of the word, they were going to put out a survey, and they wanted the SEJC to weigh in on that. But as an advisory body, the council has directed the Arts Committee to propose something and come back to the council with their proposal.
Okay.
Did I get everything, or still questions?
Yeah, no, I think that's my understanding of it too. I kind of came in when it sounds like a lot of those decisions were already made that you described. So from my perspective, it hasn't changed all that much. That's kind of what it was. But I think the biggest hurdle really was that there was so much turnover within the Arts Committee as well. So between the holidays and Brandon leaving and my workload, and then some new members coming in, and then not getting reappointed and what have you, I think that's kind of where we're at now. This is the first meeting I think I've ever been at on the Arts Committee that actually had 7 members. So I think like that's, so now we kind of have the ball and we can hopefully run with it. But that's my understanding of where it's at. And I think it's an Arts Committee project in the sense that we are going to put together a call for proposals and try and get the wording as best we can and put it in front of the city council, and hopefully they'll back it up with some funds. And once that happens, then we'll put that out to the public and see what proposals come in the door. Do we have any public commentary?
There's one.
Okay.
Thank you very much for my public commentary. So yeah, I suggest actually a Facebook page with this, just like the Spring into Haiku. I mean, why not go all out, right? The city can sponsor Facebook, Black Lives Matter, Albany, Black Lives Matter in Albany, Facebook page to where people could post artwork, that don't get selected. You could post new artwork every day, and it could be just such a really beautiful Albany Black Lives Matter Facebook page. That'd be such a wonderful group. Also, yeah, I believe like public art, are we going to be creating a monument? Is this statue going to go at, City Hall or right in front of the Albany Police Department to keep a reminder? Is this artwork going to go on, where is it going to go? City property, school property? And where is this artwork actually going to be displayed? It's going to be permanent, right? It's going to be there the next 10, 20 years. Maybe when you suggest to city council about the money issue, $5,000, $6,000, I would throw in there a maintenance fee every year for, touch up paint or, polishing a statue or power washing. I would suggest, a maintenance fee every year to keep the artwork beautiful, that sort of thing. Yeah, so I just think this is a wonderful opportunity for especially Albany, for the Black Lives Matter movement and, Malcolm X and George Floyd. There's so many Black lives that do matter. I for sure agree with this. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the outcome of this. I'm looking forward to, a statue, some sort of monument that's going to be in Albany forever. I hope we reach out to the village people, at the Albany Village for some input. But yeah, my points are, I would create a Facebook page with this Black Lives Matter, Albany Black Lives Matter Facebook. Have it be a public group. And I hope this is a permanent artwork, on either city property, school property. There can be more than one location for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Are there any other public comments?
No other public comment.
Okay, Member Abrams?
I'm just curious as to the committee part of it. Is there a subcommittee set up for this? Who's working on it, and can I be on it?
There is a subcommittee. It is currently you and I. And anyone else who wants to jump on board would be great.
Just really quickly, just so everybody knows, I know these Brown Act things are going to pop up all throughout our arts committee. Subcommittees need to say less than the quorum because we can't have groups of more than a voting quorum, a voting majority discussing these items offline. So keep that in mind. You have 2 in there right now. Robbie, we'll make a motion so it's in the minutes just to keep track of everything. But keep that in mind, everybody.
So what is
3
it?
or less.
3 or less. Okay.
Okay. If there are no more comments, then let's keep it rolling. Next agenda item.
Make a motion for that. Does anyone want to
Yeah.
make a motion to add Member Abrams?
Oh,
Thank you, Eva.
thank you. I move to add Member Abrams to the subcommittee for the Socially Engaged Project in support of the movement for Black Lives.
I second.
Great.
Just 1 second. I'm furiously writing. Hold on, just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. So now we'll do a roll call vote. Member Abrams,
Yes.
Member Black,
Yes.
Member Bergman,
Yes.
Member Gatch,
Yes.
Chair Gatch, excuse me. Member Goodman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Simonsky,
Yes.
and Member Richards.
Is she gone?
Oh,
No, she's there.
Oh, yeah, Member Richards, vote, please.
Oh, I
Couldn't hear
said
you.
yes. Can you not hear me?
Oh, yes. I heard you that time. Great. Thank you. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Chair.
great. Moving forward, we now get to agenda item 6.4, the Public Art Projects Plan and Work Plan. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to look over the attachment there. We'll pull it up and
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say there, we, for some of the returning members from last week, we did discuss this a little bit, but I'd like to just quickly go over what it is for the new members, and then leave it to the committee for discussion. The work plan, as you see shared here, hopefully everyone can see that. You had it in your packets. Is just that, right? The items that the Arts Committee is going to work on over a course of time. These are approved by the City Council, and they also follow the City Council strategic goals for that 2-year span. The first page of the work plan, as we have listed up here, is a background of the committee and its work plan, the purpose of the Arts Committee, but as well recent initiatives and accomplishments. And these generally come from the previous work plan cycle. So this current work plan was approved by council in 2019 and is lasting through the end of our fiscal year of 2021, which is the last day in June. So these accomplishments, the initiatives you see on the first page are typically from the previous work plan. You will see some carryover in there. For example, Fall into Haiku is in there. Again, Spring into Haiku was Fall into Haiku before we had a little bit of a COVID situation, as well as some of the openings of public art, such as the Albany Loop. Now, the second page, which I'm scrolling down to now, were the policy reviews and initiatives for this current work plan. So these were approved again by council in 2019, and these are the things that the Arts Committee is working on and focused on currently. So your next steps are to create this document again for the next 2-year cycle. In the past, we have taken, a lot of the policy review and initiatives, and we've kind of put them up there in the accomplishments, because there are certainly some items that you have been successful on and we've moved past. However, there are going to be other items on this work plan that are going to continue on. For example, the Fall into Haiku or Spring into Haiku, if we'd like to change that language. Member Goodwin had mentioned the Poet Laureate. So that is the task of the Arts Committee over the next couple meetings and months. We will then take the work that you do on this document and we will take it to the City Council for approval, and ensuring that we're following their guidelines and their strategic goals for the next 2 years. I think that the best way to do this is that I will just quickly kind of go over a few of the policy review and initiatives that we haven't talked about at this meeting yet. But then I would like to open it up for a discussion led by our chair, and Eva and I will take some very diligent notes. We will kind of craft and create kind of the next step in the process for this, and we will bring it back to a future meeting, the March meeting, and then we can continue to work from there. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and ask for clarifiers. And then there are a couple pieces in here that I will leave to the particular Arts Committee member who can explain it a little more. While we're kind of going through this in our brains, staff would also like to just impart to committee members, we'd like to have a name to all of these work plans. Just as in the previous item, we created a larger subcommittee. Some of these do have some committees, some have just a name attached to them, but we do want to make sure that we're actively working on all of these policy reviews and initiatives in the next work plan cycle. The Public Arts Project Plan, you will continue to hear this, new members, and it is because it is our funding vehicle for this work plan. The work plan talks about what the Arts Committee is going to do as a committee, as an advisory body for the City Council, and the PAPP, which I can switch over to right now just to make sure everybody sees it. The PAPP is how we are going to spend that money and where, and some quick comments and decisions about it. This as well is paired up and partnered with the work plan, and this goes to the City Council for approval on the 2-year cycle as well. Now, this can be adjusted. Clearly, projects can evolve and change, but you do need to go back to council for approval, any change of funds in this. Another thing to think about while we're looking at this PAPP as well is, just as Eva said, there could be some larger and new project kind of coming down the pipeline. And it's important to have the discussion on what threshold of money we would like to use, the committee would like to use in creating this PAPP. And then again, Eva could speak to this a little bit more if I missed something on this, but keep in mind of that $10,000 threshold. If it is above $10,000, it is when we do kick off the panel review for any larger art project. However, the panel review can be used if it's below $10,000 at the discretion of the committee. But if it is above $10,000, we do need to initiate that review process. And excuse me, I had all these tabs organized, and now they're clearly not. So it's going to be here it is. Okay, excuse me. Okay, Fall into Haiku is Spring into Haiku again, as Peter mentioned. The collaboration with the Economic Development Commission. There is an Economic Development Commission in the city of Albany, and the business community has always wanted to work with the arts community to vitalize and make nice places for us all to look at and walk up and down. And the arts committee clearly wants to work with the business community for the space and potential advertisement that can come along with it. The Albany Poet Laureate was quickly mentioned by Peter, but there was an Albany Poet Laureate for 2 years prior to 2020, Rebecca Black. The committee has looked for the Poet Laureate over a few sessions now, and has continued, and that has been on the previous work plan. So you'll need to decide if we want to continue on that. Again, putting names to all of our projects. The Art in Public Places Ordinance. Now that is another interesting one where a lot of the rules that we are discussing on how those public funds can and will be used has come out of. The Art in Public Places Ordinance is a large egg to crack, and there is a lot of other staff members within the city and other departments that have had influence on that. So again, keep in mind that some of these larger structural projects will require a lot of your time. And then I don't think that there is anything else. Oh, excuse me. The research opportunities, the second to last two at the bottom there, those again were initiated by a previous arts committee member. Putting art along the Bart pillars and paths is a wonderful idea. It's a blank canvas. However, that will require working with Bart as a regional authority on those spaces. And then the utility boxes, that's something that's kind of ebbed and flowed through the committee for the last couple sessions and last couple years, and really just needs a kind of name attached to it to keep the next steps forward. If anybody isn't sure what I'm talking about, if you walk, I think around Temescal and in Sacramento, certainly in Walnut Creek in San Francisco, you've seen a plastic kind of shrinky dink wraps around utility boxes, a lot of times commissioned by an artist. And then the last one on this list is choose a site that's been identified in the Arts Master Plan for public art installation. This one again is something to always consider as Arts Committee members. We have a wonderful Arts Master Plan which suggests kind of top priority places to put public art around the city. So again, just making sure that we're following these documents that really help guide the committee and commission. I kind of jumped over this earlier, and excuse me for that, but I would like to really quickly go into the sub bullet points on the PAPP, the Public Art Projects Plan. So if you go up to the first bullet point under the 2019 to 2021 policy reviews and initiatives, the Ohlone Greenway Public Art Project, there were two of them. One was the Albany Loop. You may have seen if you walk or ride your bike or drive along Masonic Avenue. It's very large, and it is a play sculpture intended for something pretty to look at, but also people to kind of, and kids to play around on. And then there was a creek art, which was going to be, which the RFP and the review process happened parallel with the Albany Loop. However, there was just the contractor couldn't quite meet the city in the middle of doing the project, and after many months of kind of an impasse, the committee decided to kind of take back the offer because the artist could not reach the contractual goals that he was requested to. The sculpture loan program, and here's just another one where I'm going to have Eva chime in quickly if I miss anything. The sculpture loan program is the idea to kind of get the most bang for your buck in public art. As we'll find, and many people have been on the committee, public art is very expensive. The idea behind sculpture loan was that the city would create an RFP and an actual space for someone's personal sculptures to be loaned to the city for a 2-year span. The committee addressed 3 locations along the Ohlone Greenway for these potential sculptures to go into and released an application. The committee received 3 applications back. All 3 were complete. And so the city, the Arts Committee picked the 3 locations are Washington and Masonic, if anybody's envisioning the Ohlone Greenway. Washington is 1 street north of Solano. The next spot is called Rotary Hill, and it is underneath the Bart tracks on the south side of Solano at the Solano-Masonic intersection. And the last piece is called the Dartmouth Circle, and there used to be a pretty big tree just south of Dartmouth Street on the Ohlone Greenway on Masonic, but that tree has since passed, so it is now just kind of a round, large, grassy circle. Those are the 3 locations. This project has been stalled a little bit while we are working with our maintenance department and public works department to engineer these pads that the sculptures will actually sit on. We have some great news, which is that staff has worked really hard and found some contacts outside of the Arts Committee, outside of the city, who have engineered and started to work on some designs and plans for these concrete pads. So once we get a more larger scope of work and what these pads and designs will look like, we can certainly bring them back to the committee. And then the committee will, since you are a relatively newer iteration of the committee, staff believes it's a good idea to reopen the discussion and have an official recommendation to the city council of where each one of those pieces should sit and at what type of pad it should sit on. Just keep in mind, one of the art pieces does not necessarily need a pad to sit on because of the way that it's designed and engineered. However, it's important for everybody to look at these spaces and look at the pieces of art, because certainly if we have a large concrete pad, we want a big sculpture on it, right? If we have something that's a little more of a hidden view, we could go with something a little bit smaller, or maybe not quite so grand, if you feel for those spaces. And then the last one on the public arts, sorry, Eva, did you want to chime in on anything I missed for the sculpture loan there really quickly?
Nope.
Okay.
I think you got it.
Thanks. And then the last one on the PAPP overview is the community projects. The community projects is, again, another just great project set up by the Arts Committee, where we encourage and have encouraged community members to get together, build social capital and community organizing to be the art that they would like to see in the city. That particular project was year. However, the location that was selected was the side of a private business. And so if you can imagine kind of doing the contractual work through to get public art placed on a private business funded with public dollars is just a little bit of contractual work. So again, the money has been great job on it, and now we're just working on getting some correct and appropriate contractual language to get the paint up on the wall. Again, Hillview Pet Hospital, which is, it's not Castro, excuse me, it's on San Pablo, just down from Castro, just south of Castro.
Corner of Castro.
Oh, it is the corner cut. Thank you. And then also there is other businesses that share eyesight, right? So we also want to do right by our Albany businesses and contact also the businesses that will be near this public art. We can we can look back at a future meeting back through this project, but it was a mural to debunk the myths of stereotypes through muralism. So the artist that put in the RFP and was selected for this his name's Christian Muniz, and his partner Hamina. They contacted all the private property owners along Ohlone Greenway, and that is the artist who has done those 8 murals along the Ohlone Greenway. Again, drive along Masonic or walk along the Ohlone Greenway, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, whew, that was a lot. I would like to now put you on this hot seat here. Member Black, could you please explain the Albany Community Center Foyer Arts Gallery exhibit? Member Black, you're muted.
Okay.
I can hear you. No, we can't.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. So for people who are new to the committee, there's obviously a gallery in the community center. We do 4 shows a year. Each show is obviously 3 months apiece. The submissions, we ask for submissions from starting in May or June, depending on what's going on. The deadline is the last week in August. And then the meeting in September that we all have, we choose the works we're interested in having in the gallery for the coming year. The shows begin for that particular, for whatever year it is, in January. There is a $20 application fee for applying to have a show. The fee for the show is $50. That covers the postcards and the use of our security hanging devices. And then on top of that, there is a $100 deposit, which makes sure that our walls aren't damaged and that we get our security devices back. The artist is responsible for putting up their show. They will put it up on the Friday before the show opens, which is on Saturday, and then there will be a reception on that Sunday after Saturday from 4 till 6. They will provide whatever kind of food or drink that they would like, and we provide them with tablecloths and glassware and things like that, so, and paper napkins, so things move very smoothly. We have 3 shows that have not been, obviously because of the pandemic, we had our first show in January. When that closed, we were set to go up with the second show and we were closed down. So we have the 3 artists left from last year, which hopefully we are going, and I've talked to all of them and they are ready to go as soon as we are ready to go. So we will be short 1 show, but I think by the time we get everything going, we can just start again for submissions and fill the first show when we get to being open. Does anybody have any questions how this works? Okay, there we are.
Thank you, Cheryl. And just quick clarifier on that, the gallery is in the lobby between the Albany Community Center and the library. So 1249, 1247 Masonic or Marin, excuse me.
Marin. So, and basically that's, it's a very neat, easy system. Our shows have been very successful. We've been very happy with them. We like to do a whole range of things. You have to be from the area, not from Albany, because we just don't have that many artists in Albany. So, yep, that's how it works.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, Member Gash, I'm going to give it back to you. If anybody has any questions about any of these, please feel free to ask. I did skip over the fall into haiku, as well as the, I think that was the only one I skipped over, just because, Member Goodman, we talked about that earlier in the sake of time. So again, if you have any questions, please ask. And then we can open it up to public comment, and then we can bring it back to the committee. And then I would like to you to, again, start kind of having the discussion. In the past, we have started, again, Eva, please let me know if there's a better way of doing this. In the past, we've kind of looked through these policy reviews and initiatives and worked on our accomplishments from there. And then in another meeting, we have kind of worked on the next steps. We can kind of do it a hybrid model at the same time. Keep in mind, we are 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. And if we move past 10 o'clock, we will have to make some motions to continue the meeting going on. But let's go to questions right now. And then just so you know, Chair, we do have one public comment.
Okay, Liam.
I just wanted to add to what Liam had already said too, is that all of these or none of these can move forward. So this is a time for the committee to decide what items they want to move to the next work plan, which ones they don't, and any new items, keeping in mind that this is a 2-year plan and there's a lot already on it. So just what's reasonable. And then the city also has two items to add to. I'll just add them right now and we can discuss them at a later time. But I also want to add that this is a multi-meeting, you only meet once a month, multi-meeting process. The hope is that we, the committee, Chair Gatch would go to council probably in April. So hopefully this meeting and next meeting, there can be a lively discussion, and in that time, staff and the chair and will kind of finalize and get a good draft, if you will, to bring back to the committee next month. And then if it's needed, we can see if April meeting, if more discussion is needed, but if not, you would go to council then. Just really quickly, I'll just mention 2 things. The herons at the bulb, we've been notified that they are rusting, and probably members Goodman and Black remember the last time that they were rusting and they got refurbished. The amount, I believe, was about $7,000, and that was in 2012 to get refurbished. So the committee gets to decide what it is they, something they can put on the work plan is just to research it. You don't have to decide tonight or next month, but something to look into is whether you want to relocate the heron so that they're not by the ocean, refurbish them, let them kind of live their life down at the bulb until they're no longer safe. So that is one item. And the other item is an interesting one that's come up recently from Public Works is, as you can imagine, they're constantly covering up graffiti, whether it's on the Bart tracks, Ohlone Greenway, at the parks. And so they brought up an idea that they asked staff to bring to the committee is if they would want to kind of create a graffiti abatement mural program where the city would identify private property, city-owned property as possible locations for a mural. And if it was interesting to the committee, they would have money set aside in their PAPP, and there would be a process on how to pick sites and pick artists and everything too. So I'll mention those and turn it back to the committee for questions on anything here, and otherwise we can go to public comment.
And great, thank you. And just to clarify, the next work plan would take effect in June. Is that correct?
July 1.
July.
Is the start of the next fiscal year. Yeah.
And also just a clarifying question. Once we put forward the work plan, we are also presumably asking City Council to fund those items that are on the work plan?
So your PAPP is using funds from the Art in Public Places Fund, which is the pot for that 1.75% of commercial development cost that is in lieu if the business did not want to put up public art. So they are Art in Public Places Fund. And I know that one of our members is going to ask me, and I just don't have that dollar amount on me right now. Forgive me, we'll bring it back to the next committee, and we'll make sure that that is out there before we do any more work on that. But it is, the PAPP is the vehicle to use the Art in Public Places Fund that's derived from the Art in Public Places Ordinance.
And the council will have to approve both the work plan and the budget. So it's the committee's responsibility to allocate a dollar amount to these projects within the PAPP. And then the council, you bring it to council and say, this is what we propose and this is why. And then they ask questions and they either approve or ask it to be modified.
Okay. Member Goodman?
Yes, Eva, could you clarify what you were talking about with the City Works Department and their suggestion for murals? Was that meant to be a part of the PAPP, or was that going to be funded directly by Public Works?
Oh, that was a suggestion that came out of conversations with Public Works. So to bring to the committee. So it would be an option for the committee if they wanted to create. We just came up with this graffiti abatement mural program with the main purpose of, you know, kind of a win-win, that we're creating art in Albany, but also that we're hitting, you know, murals have been proven to prevent graffiti, and the murals along the Ohlone Greenway are examples of that. So Public Works really got excited about the idea of it, and the Arts Committee again has the background and has the process written out. So that's why we're bringing it to you.
Well, I was asked about funding though. Was Public Works suggesting they were going to pay for it?
No, it would be up to the committee to, if they wanted to include it in their PAPP and the work plan. Yeah, good question.
I think that member Richards had a question, Chair.
I'm sorry, I really need to go. I didn't realize how long this meeting was going to be lasting, and I'm not really sure. Are they always like 2 or 3 hours long? But I definitely need to leave right now, and maybe I can talk to somebody about it later.
Sometimes they are longer, sometimes they are shorter. But yeah, they traditionally can run up into 10 o'clock without a motion to continue on. But we are more than happy to contact you, Member Richards. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
All right. Member Szymanski, you had a question? Oh, you're muted.
I just wanted to reiterate about the murals. I found that to be really true. You know, when you create a mural, you get rid of graffiti. It's really a win-win. But I wondered what our interface is with Planning Commission. I mean, they have an idea about how to renovate or reinvigorate Solano Avenue. And so how does the public art interface with the Planning Commission?
After the planning has kind of gone in, I think that each kind of redevelopment kind of has its own life to it. But I think a really good metaphor and example of that is the Ohlone Greenway. The Ohlone Greenway was scheduled to be retrofitted for Bart many years ago. And so Bart was coming in to kind of tear up a lot of spaces in there. So they reached out to the city and the Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces Commission on what to do when you're replacing the tore up space. And then the Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces Commission then tapped the shoulder of the Arts Committee to help implement some art along the Ohlone Greenway. So there is a Planning and Zoning Commission. They are, as well as the Planning Department, and they are probably actively working on new developments in the city, and they will certainly would like to get the Arts Committee's opinion on kind of the next steps of that. In the past as well, we just haven't necessarily needed the director of the Public Works Department. let me start again. The Director of Community Development, our planning department, is always available to come in and chat with the committee about any new developments coming down the pipeline and anything that could affect that art in public places fund or any projects coming up.
Right. Also, my second question is, if you have someone who would like to maybe donate work to the city, where would they go? In other words, I know like concrete contractors or someone like that who would want to do that.
These are, yeah, Eva can address this. The wonderful things to have, kind of keep in your quiver in the back, and when more things pop up for those opportunities, you know, that is one of the advantages of the Arts Committee, is that they're normally kind of looped into the business community and the city as a whole.
I think, adding on, I think this is the perfect place to bring that information. So if you had someone in mind, either you can bring it to the committee and say, hey, I know a contractor who's interested in doing X, Y, and Z, or you can always invite them to come to a meeting and speak either in public comment or on a specific agenda item, and then the committee can again keep that in the back of their mind as they're planning for the future. But yeah, okay, that's great.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So what's the best way to move this forward? Are we looking for people to discuss items to add or remove? Is that the next steps here?
Sorry to interrupt. We do have one public comment, and then we can kind of talk about that afterwards.
Okay, and just as a lead into the public comment, I think as a reminder for our public as well as for our committee members, we're an advisory committee. We make advisory decisions to go to the city council. We are not actually creating the artwork, right? We're making advisory decisions on what artwork should get made in Albany. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Gash.
Public comment.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Jeremiah. A couple questions. So the Ohlone Greenway is also the BART trail, the pedestrian windy path, and also the bike path. If I'm not mistaken, I was wondering if we put up artwork on the Ohlone Greenway, do we need to notify Bart first? Whose land is that? I mean, I know it's in Albany, but does Bart own that land? I was just wondering if we had to ask Bart's permission if we wanted to put up artwork. You know, the blue-green Albany sign. I know Liam, I think, knows what I'm talking about. That Albany metal sign. Yeah, I just think the Ohlone Greenway. Hopefully, we don't have to get Bart's permission every time we'd want to do something. Also, I was going to suggest also Key Route, the median, the grass median. Whose property is that, and can we is that land to where we could put a cement base for a statue in the middle of Key Route, the big grass areas? I know there's trees planted, but is that a public space to where we can put additional artwork? I just didn't want everybody to forget that we have Key Route Boulevard. There's a lot of grass, but maybe we could put up a statue or put up, you know, something on Key Route. Also, if someone writes Black Lives Matter or a BLM and they do it with spray paint or something, is that considered graffiti? And then would Public Works paint over Black Lives Matter artwork that someone put somewhere, and that just
Jeremiah, if you can keep your public comment to the agenda item, which is the work plan and the PAPP.
Yeah, I was trying to. And
Okay.
and also the it was kind of the work plan with regards to like where we could post public art, and also the Solano Avenue. Well, you mentioned the graffiti. You know, it was a topic you were discussing about graffiti abatement. So I was just wondering if Black Lives Matter, someone posts Black Lives Matter, is that considered graffiti by somebody? Also, the Solano Avenue has the street lights, and I was wondering if that is a place to where we could have public artwork. We can put a flag on the side of the street pole, or the light pole. We can have a flag installed on the side of it or something. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Are there any other public comments?
No, I don't see any right now.
Okay. Are there any comments from the Arts Committee? Yeah, Member Goodman.
Yes, well, I will say that Spring in the Haiku will continue. I would like also to keep the Poet Laureate on the work plan. The idea of finding a replacement for Becca. With regard to the collaborate with the Economic Development Committee, I note that murals is under there, and perhaps we could keep that line item and expand the murals here to include what Eva was talking about. Although perhaps it's already in there implicitly, and we don't really need to add anything. But we'll just take it into account that's part of the mural program. I also would like to be involved with this Economic Development Committee. The problem is that they always meet at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's just impossible for me. So I think it's important that the committee has its voice with the city. And if it's impossible for anyone else to step up, I can possibly find a way to attend some of those 5 o'clock meetings, but I think it's important that we continue with that. The other thing I wanted to say was the public art master plan and the art in public places ordinance. I think those are kind of parts of the same thing. Maybe they could be joined as a line item. I don't know why they have to be separate, but it's kind of what Chair Gotch was talking about, expanding the idea of art and actually writing that into the ordinance and then getting the city to approve it. I think we've taken a number of stabs at that in the past, and it'd be really good to have that moving forward, but it needs kind of a concerted effort over the long term with a lot of grunt work done for research and also writing, and then working with the city to try and figure out the best way of moving it through the city channels. So I think it'd be good for us to keep that on there, but does require a time commitment from whoever's involved in it.
I would agree with all of that. I think also, I mean, as you guys have heard tonight and maybe a little bit before, I am definitely really interested and invested in pushing that definition a little bit, and still working within the limits and not overtaxing our staff here in any regard. But I do think that there are opportunities to be creative in how we interpret that and moving forward. With that said, I have a couple of suggestions for things that we might add, and maybe these are best saved for another discussion since we're running late. But just as a starter, without going into a whole presentation or a sales pitch, I think it does dovetail onto what Peter was saying about economic development, particularly along Solano Avenue. There has been some interest in artists working in storefronts. So that might be something that we can pursue and think about putting on the work plan. There's been a little bit of work done on that regard. And there's also some really great models that are already available. And I think some of that has gone out to previous committee members, but maybe needs to run back through. looking at San Francisco's model, for example, for that. I think there's an opportunity to do a kind of micro granting process. I think Haiku could be expanded in a way where the city is supporting, $500 projects spread throughout the city with the initiative of artists and community members in Albany, something along the lines of Haiku. But for example, and this is just spitballing, but I know there's been a lot of attention around the schools and activities for youth and trying to figure out how to socially distance yet safely socialize youth in Albany. So something along the lines of Albany Coachella, which was a musical performance throughout Albany, could perhaps be expanded to be a day of chalk drawings across Albany, or a day of poster making, or something that is short-term, temporal, distributed, and the micro grant would be for someone to step forward, an artist or a community member to step forward, like Eugenie presented earlier in the meeting, and kind of initiate and organize a one-day event. That might be another sort of model that we might think about. We might also think about municipal artist partnerships. There's a lot of cities now that are having artists in residence, where that working within the city or within city departments can also materialize in a visual form at the end of it. So I think it could still be in keeping with the master plan, but could in many ways alleviate some of the labor pressure from the staff, but also still bring in an artist into Albany to think about how to engage with the Albany community. So I do think that there's some other projects that we can think about putting on the work plan. And obviously there's a lot of discussion there and a lot of work to be had. And I noticed, Member Abrams has their Zoom hand. I didn't recognize the Zoom hand up. So I will shut up now and hand it over to Member Abrams.
Okay, I guess I can take the Zoom hand down now. I just wanted to have the place marked. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I was wondering about, I was hoping that they would continue around Thanksgiving, someone from the Economic Development Committee came to the Solano Avenue Association, and I'm one of the volunteer board members for that, talking about the idea of art in the windows of the empty storefronts. And I did write something to both these committees, the Arts Committee, and I would love to see that continue in some fashion. I don't know if my idea is feasible or not, but that was something that I thought was really interesting, and I was hoping that would go forward. So I'd love to hear more about that. And as far as murals, that's another thing where I didn't think that was original idea from Public Works, because I think maybe even Peter had brought that up years ago. The idea of getting a lot of there's buildings on Solano that are regularly targeted, and my building was one of them. So they painted on my building, where did the Christmas trees go? So I painted Christmas trees on my building. So I do think that is a great way to get the community involved and to beautify the city, and then we could come up with some kind of tour of the city, virtual or otherwise, of all the murals that are around. I know Chocolate Bar put something nice up on theirs a while back, and so on. So I would love those to stay on the list or be completed.
Great.
Just really quickly, Member Gash, I just wanted to just throw this out there because we do have new members. What Member Abrams was talking about there is Chair Goodman created a wonderful mural brochure that we have in the Arts Committee has, and it's the kind of idea to get business owners and property owners excited about helping put the mural on their property, right? Because it's the public property versus private property conundrum. I just really quickly wanted to give the history to what Member Abrams was talking about there. The document we still have mural, Peter's great mural brochure.
Great, thank you, Liam.
Gesundheit.
Any other comments or suggestions for the work plan, or should we leave it there, knowing that we will pick it up and interrogate these delicious ideas in the future? Yeah, Member Goodman.
Any thoughts on the herons?
My initial thought is if it's $7,000 to refurbish them, and when was the last time they were refurbished? 2012. I think we could put out a call and create new work for $7,000, and it might be more interesting than herons. I go down to the bulb all the time. Even I'm gonna OG here and say, like, I go down to the bulb even before the pandemic, and I know the herons that you're talking about when you mention them, but I rarely even notice them. It's not even in my on my radar, and that's hopefully no slight on anyone here. If you were really invested in those herons, good for you. I still love you, but I think if we're talking about a turnover of 8 years for $7,000, I think we could put out a call and get some new artwork down there. Yeah, Member Szymanski, you're muted.
I think that Berkeley has had an experience like this just recently with their statues that were on the bridge, that they had to make the same decision. And the fact is that it's also going to cost a lot to take them down. So there's that issue also. But I agree with you. I think we could get something much more Albany specific than the herons. Yes.
How big are these herons?
Haven't you ever been down there?
I have been down there. I don't remember them.
See? They're right where you go to the end and there's a little circle there, like there's a dead end. And these are, you may not know they're herons, but it's a metal sculpture of like 3 herons that are there.
But how big?
They're, I don't know, 12 feet high, maybe.
That's what I would guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not that hard to move.
Not as hard, no, not nearly as hard as the ones on the bridge in Berkeley, which I also thought were. That's my opinion.
A sawzall could take them down, I think.
Yes, yeah. Well, that they were eventually returned to the artist, which you can always do. You can contact the artist and say, "Do you want them back?"
I just want to reiterate too, and discussion is great for this, but this work plan will go to council. Liam is showing you the herons.
There it is.
And not Public Works hasn't weed whacked that picture in a while. But again, it's okay to just let the council know that you're going to research to look into it and make a plan too. So that can be at a subsequent meeting as well.
Thank you.
I'll speak just to the projects within the PAPP that have already been discussed. The sculpture loan program that's moving forward. So that seems like an item that would move forward to the next 2-year plan, as well as the community projects, assuming that it's not going to be done by June, it would move forward as well. Are there any other, Peter mentioned the Haiku program. Are there any other, does anyone, are they passionate about the Bart pillars or the utility boxes? Those are 2, as we mentioned before, that one of the members had just expressed interest in wanting to see that further. And again, it does say research, so it doesn't say we're going to do it. This is a 2-year plan, and we have to make sure that it's, again, reasonable. But is anyone interested in those, or are those something that you prefer to take off?
Member Goodman?
I'm not volunteering for either of those, but I want to say that if they're not on the plan, then it becomes very difficult for us to take them up on a whim or because someone in the community feels strongly and says, you guys ought to do this. So if there's any thought that maybe we want to do it, then we would say, well, what does it say? Well, it says what it says, research opportunities. That's pretty vague enough. That just gives us the option to move with them if we decide to do it.
Right.
I'm fairly neutral about those projects personally.
I am also. They seem to, have been done many, many, many times and with varied results. So I'm not really enthusiastic about them. But I'm perfectly happy just to leave them there for research opportunities if they want to stay.
There was even talk too that Black Lives Matter, the project or whatever it becomes, they might address one of these locations as a possible site as well too. And then I also wanted to bring up the project that Chair Gatch has been working on too, that obviously would go in the next work plan and money would need to be allocated to the PAPP too.
Okay.
Great. Are we, Member Goodman?
Getting back to what Eva was just saying, with Chair Gotch's plan, at what point do we actually have to assign a dollar amount to it?
Well, we need to bring the PAPP, the vehicle for spending, to council when we bring the work plan. So that will be for us to have this continued discussion. But as Eva mentioned earlier, we can continue this discussion next month, and staff will have an opportunity to bring things back. In the recreation world, we always say, look at what other people have done. If you can get an idea from there and maybe start working that direction. The three previous Ohlone Greenway public art pieces, the loop and the creek art that didn't kind of move forward, those were just kind of not just decided, but to be $10,000 each to work for $30,000 to start the PAPP. So that's kind of the historic reason of that amount of dollars. But I think that's going to be some research from the committee, and certainly staff can help with that as well.
And to further this conversation too, staff will come back with an agenda item on the next agenda that goes into detail of what the options are for the sculpture loan program. And the $10,000 was allocated. The idea, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, is that the Dartmouth Circle could be a more substantial pedestal gathering place that has a statue there, but it also is possibly a seating wall as well, which obviously adds a lot to the cost. But it is quite the conversation piece in Albany if you can make it substantial. So that will come back. And I think that will help guide the discussion, at least around that item, and how much the committee wants to set aside for that project, if they want to increase it from $10,000. And we'll have some quotes based on the different drawings too. So,
okay.
Can I ask another question? I know it seems like one of the big stumbling blocks for getting projects to move forward is that in part, we're on the committee, everyone here is volunteer. And in terms of the responsibilities that staff has, it's like this is only a portion of your total responsibilities. So it seems like we're always stretched a little thin in terms of effort. Is there the possibility of including something in the work plan, like paid interns or like a project management position for art projects, or ways of employing other community members in overseeing or helping to administer artworks?
unfortunately, not at this time. Just looking at across the board at all advisory bodies, that's not how they're set up to employ someone or to have an intern. I think it's important to just remember that the council looks to the advisory body to do the research and then bring it to them to make the final decision. But just as you've said, I mean, everyone here on the committee is a volunteer, and staff time is limited as well. So keeping that in mind, I think we'll also formulate the next 2-year plan too, of again, just what is reasonable. I think everyone in this virtual room is very passionate and wants to do a lot, but what's reasonable to take on.
Mm-hmm. There's no arms we can twist anywhere in the city to get you guys like a buddy in there, like an additional position, like a dedicated arts buddy to help you guys out a little.
That's awesome. I love the idea. You know, I don't love this answer, but it comes down to staff time, right? Because someone who manages that person, where does if it's going to be a paid position, where does that salary come from? So I'd love to say yes. And I think it's something that I think at this point, the answer probably is that we couldn't make that happen. But I love getting creative and thinking outside the box. So we can definitely continue that conversation to see, and we can run it up the flagpole. But
okay, great. Should we table this part of the agenda for our next meeting then? Or is there anything else that we want to try and settle on the work plan for today? All right, then I move that we table this agenda item for further discussion for our next meeting. Is there a second?
no need to second it. We can you guys can just decide to move along. Staff will put together kind of a draft and work with you, Chair Gatch, to make a working draft. And then at the next meeting, probably we'll dive a little deeper into the PAPP. And so I think it was a great first discussion. Hopefully everyone's wheels are turning. And I think at the next meeting, it'll help to get to the next step.
And I'm going to take a really quick jump backwards because Eva was mentioning some of those, the murals along Ohlone Greenway. And we also had a public comment quickly. Part of the Ohlone Greenway is owned by the city of Albany. Part of the Ohlone Greenway is owned by Bart. Where that has in the past decided on where we put public art. So the Albany Loop, which we've mentioned before, I believe we moved it to ensure it was completely off of Bart property, so we didn't need to work as much with Bart. However, we may need to work with Bart in the future if there's, the pillars, sculpture loan, anything that kind of comes in there. So both, yes, both own the Ohlone Greenway.
Right. And Liam, can you remind us what the next agenda item is? I don't have
the next agenda item is future agenda items. So we talked about this a little bit earlier today, but Chair, you can just kind of put it out there to the committee. Does anyone have any future agenda items? It's also a good point for you to kind of be following at home as well and say, we didn't finish work plan, so we'll want to talk about that. Hey, Peter, Chair Goodman, would you like to continue the spring into haiku? I said chair, didn't I? Member Goodman, would you like to update any more on spring into haiku? So on and so forth.
Okay. Then I am putting it out there. Here it is. It's out there. Does anyone have any future agenda items? You can, of course, add agenda items in the weeks between now and the next meeting as well. You can email Liam or Eva, or maybe those should mostly go to Liam.
Thank you for bringing that up, Member Gash. Everybody, you may see Eva CC'd, but contact directly to me if I'm unavailable. We will make sure that information gets to Eva and she can contact everybody. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Member Goodman, you're muted.
Okay. Yes, so I will talk about the haiku program again. I wanted to make sure that we get a readout of the amount of money that's in the public art plan. Plus, I'd love to hear, maybe you could just get a written report or something from the planning department as to, are there any new developments coming in? Any promise of new money that is likely to show up within the next 2 years? That might help us figure out how much money we have to spend. And also, I missed introductions to the new members. So I wonder if at the top of the next meeting, we could just devote some time to us introducing, all of us introducing ourselves to each other. I mean, very briefly, just, it'd be nice.
Great suggestion. Yeah. Any other future agenda items? Okay. Well, if there are no other future agenda items, then what do I move to close? Or adjourn?
Adjourn. Don't even need a motion. You can just adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. There we are, my first chairing ship.